to the Australian audience, so I will talk about it also. If I try to highlight the Australian role, they play also a very growing role in Pakistan's economic development and development cooperation, particularly through education and skill migration. And you know that thousands of Pakistani students studying in Australia and many skilled professionals contribute to both economies. In the moment of tension, of course, middle actors like Pakistan become very important for preventing escalation, I would say. A very small segment of the society bears the tax burden, and particularly the salary class. Pakistan has a youth bulge. We say it the youth bulge. If these reforms are actually pursued, Pakistani youth bulge can become a demographic dividend, not only burden. 60% of the population actually is very young population of 20s and early 30s. The issue is not just, I would say, the lack of opportunity. Many young graduates to whom sometimes I talk to also, they don't worry about getting a job. We need capability and skill development, investment actually in the human capital, whether it is education, whether it is healthcare, whether it is infrastructure, in the jobs. The recent technology has brought a lot of freelancers in Pakistan.
We stand together hand in hand, building dreams across the land. I light the way to show the path where hope and love will grow.
Good evening and welcome to HYIERI Global Affairs. I'm Jayatri Gunaratne, joining from Perth, Western Australia. HYIERI Australia respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we operate. For today's discussion, we focus on Pakistan's evolving role in rapidly shifting global landscape. Within this context, we examine its diplomatic positioning, economic challenges, and the future prospects for its people, particularly for the younger generation. To discuss this topic, I'm pleased to be joined by Dr. Noor Fatima, a professor at the International Islamic University of Islamabad, Pakistan. Dr. Noor Fatima earned her master's in the public policy and governance from Potsdam University in Germany and her doctorate in QAU and postdoctoral from the University of North Carolina, United States. Professor Dr. Fatima is the first Asian female professor to receive the Luther King Peace Award from the U.S. State Department. She brings deep academic and policy insights into global politics, international relations, governance, and economic development. She has authored numerous academic papers and books on global political economy and governance and has presented Pakistan in several international academic forums. Welcome, Dr. Fatima. It's indeed an honor to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Jayatri. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you so much.
Let me begin with our first question to move forward the discussion. From historical perspective, Pakistan has often positioned itself as a bridge between regions and powers. So, in this context of rising tension between the United States and Iran, impacting energy markets and regional stability, how viable is Pakistan's role as a mediator today? And to what extent could effective diplomacy from Pakistan contribute to regional stability and even broader global affairs, in your opinion? Global peace, I would say.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Jayatri. It is a very, very important question in the given situation of the war between Iran and, of course, United States. You know, if I put it this way, that historically Pakistan was described as a bridge state. But we see now it is a shift from a passive positioning to active diplomatic facilitation. In recent months, Pakistan has taken a more proactive role in reducing tension in South and West Asia, of course. And it is particularly in the context of a quiet engagement with both Tehran and Washington. What makes Pakistan relevant here is not to solve the issue between US and Iran conflict, because that conflict is actually deeper, based on the deeper issues like nuclear concerns and long-term standing, strategic mistrust. So, but we can help them, help in the de-escalation in the region of this tension. So Pakistan, in my view, is playing actually three kind of role practically in its diplomacy. First, it's I will put it in this way, that it is a communication channel. During this tension time, Pakistan maintains a good relation, of course, with Iran and the United States, as well as, of course, the key Gulf actors. So this allowed it to act as a quite communication channel, because that when there is a tension between, a tension level is very high, of course, so dialogue between the two countries become very difficult. So sometime I would say that diplomacy is not about big agreement. It is about preventing misunderstanding between the two parties, and that's what we are actually doing, so that the misunderstanding should not turn into the crisis. And second, of course, Pakistan's role is very important in de-escalation, its neighborhood, and Pakistan is working as a regional stabilizer, because that matters, because country that can stabilize its own immediate environment gains credibility for a regional stabilizer as well. So Pakistan is kind of known for the regional stabilizer, peace stabilizer also. So the third, I think, why Pakistan is important in this crisis is, of course, as you said, as you mentioned in your question also, that there is a need of economic, and there is energy stake, and of course the economic impact as well. So it is very much a practical economic dimension that Pakistan is strong. Pakistan is actually having a strong incentives between this stability, because Pakistan's 80% kind of fuel is dependent on the Iran and, of course, Strait of Hormuz. So especially in terms of energy cooperation and energy and regional connectivity, this stability and, of course, this harmony between these two countries are very important. So far, Pakistan mediation is not, I would say, abstract at all. It is directly linked to its own energy security as well. And now Pakistan has very, I would say, visibly has gone from a back channel diplomacy to the visible diplomacy. And traditionally, Pakistan preferred always to have a low profile and back channel diplomacy. But now visibility between two countries shows that we have become a more openly we are engaging to de-escalate the region's tension at this time. So at the same time, I would say that we should be realistic. We should be realistic, because Pakistan is not a primary decision maker in US-Iran relations. The core issue, like the nuclear questions and sanctions, are beyond actually the regional mediation. But in the moment of tension, of course, middle actors like Pakistan become very important for preventing escalation, I would say.
That's really interesting perspective, I would say, yes, to look at the question. Yeah. And moving on to our second question, Dr. Noor, you explained about some economic perspective related to Pakistan, that these diplomatic initiatives were also a part of Pakistan's own economic interests. So, since you mentioned these few economic challenges Pakistan is facing, looking ahead, what reforms or shifts in political sphere or landscape do you think are most critical for Pakistan to achieve sustainable and inclusive economic growth within the country's perspective?
Yes, Joshi, thank you so much for asking this question. See, if we look at Pakistan economic trajectory, the real challenge actually is not just achieving growth. The real challenge, but I think as a political economist, is that we need to achieve consistent, inclusive, and resilient growth. In Pakistan, if you look at Pakistan's history, economic history, you will find that in 60s, Pakistan has a growth. surpassing all its peers in the region. And in mid 2000, if you look at 2004, 5, 6, you will see 6, 7, 8% GDP of Pakistan. But this growth was not even, or it was mostly uneven. It was short-lived and vulnerable to shocks. So the question is, what need to be to do as a reform or a structure change? As you said rightly, in my view, actually, I would say that we need to go to the institutional stability, or what we call it in the political economy is institutional economics. Actually, I would say that Pakistan doesn't suffer, Jayatri, a shortage of policies. We actually produce quite a lot of them. The real issue is that policy don't stay long enough to build confidence. That is, I think, in my view, the real issue. So every few years, we see, sometimes every few months, even we saw in previous years that taxation rules change, investment policy shift, investment policy regime conceived at the top of the political will is different when it comes down for the implementation. There is so many overlapping of the things, and the clash, and of course the contrast, that becomes the problem for the understanding of the investors. And then regulatory frameworks also become a very cumbersome things for the investors, or sometimes it is reversed. So for investor, whether domestic or international, for both of them, this creates uncertainty. And uncertainty is the biggest, I would say, a deterrent to long-term investment in Pakistan. So the real reform here is not introducing new policies. I won't go at all. I'm not for the new policies at all. But what I'm advocating is that please ensure the policy continuity, makes today as your institution strong, and basically economic development should be not based on the personalities or on a particular government. It should be anchored through economic decision making. And if I may briefly connect to a practical example, Jayatri, you will realize that Pakistan experience with Pakistan-China Economic Corridor, which is a big flagship project of China, of BRI with Pakistan, has been quite instructive in this way, because there was no policy change. So in the first place, we often call CPEC 1. The focus was largely on infrastructure, on energy projects, on roads and connectivity, right? This was important because it addressed our critical bottleneck issues like energy shortage and everything. And now we have quite good road development with that, and then motorways, of course, and economic zones and all these things. But now you see, because that was successfully implemented in Pakistan, now they are offering, the China is offering Pakistan investment. This is called CPEC 2.0. This will emphasize on shifting towards industrial cooperation, agriculture, technology, and special economic zones. Why I have referred this example here? Because that is a very successful example, a success story of foreign investment in Pakistan, where the policies itself sustained. So the shift actually aligns very closely with the kind of reform as I mentioned. So this was the point, very important for vis-a-vis our reform thing. Second, I think the very burning issue, very critical issue, I think, with Pakistan, and historical this issue is there unresolved. That is broadening the tax base and addressing the informality of the economic sector. You know, Pakistan's economy, if you look at the figures, normally it says that 60% of the Pakistan economy is based on informal or undocumented system. So you can well imagine the taxation collection of the government is how much is a big challenge. So this big challenge creates a structural imbalance, right? A very small segment of a society bears the tax burden, and particularly the salary class, while large part of the society, they remain outside of it. And Pakistan tax to GDP ratio has historically been like 10 to 12%, which is significantly low than our peer country in the region also, where they are having 15% to the GDP. So if we have improved sometime 15 to 16%, but much of it is increase of tax. Tax was not from broadening its base, but it was from existing taxpayer. So the sectors which need to be bring into net is, for instance, the recent technology has brought a kind of development, a lot of freelancers in Pakistan. Agriculture sector is there for the good taxation. Real estate is now much into tax, but still the transfer of the real estate is still informal. So it brings particularly what I say now, it reminded me, the retail sector and the wholesale trade in Pakistan. It is the biggest, I would say, the gap of the taxes. So these are the largest sectors in Pakistan. But unfortunately, Jayashri, the significant portion operates, as I said, outside the formal documentation, and so that brings the, of course, imbalance of the system. So the result is quite predictable, as we know, that state struggles to generate enough revenue for essential public investment, whether it is education, whether it is healthcare, whether it is infrastructure, either job, or maybe indirect taxes. So that is the really problem that the government is struggling. So the reform is just not the increasing tax, but it is the fairness and documentation, in my view. And third, very quick, I will mention about if reform has to be the government plan, then investment actually in the human capital, or human capital investment and productivity. You know, long-term growth never is driven by short-term financial adjustment, by IMF programs or the aid or loan. No, it is not driven at all. It is driven by people. And you must know that Pakistan has the youngest population. It is the youngest population in the world, which is often described as a demographic dividend. But this dividend only materializes if we invest in education, skill, and health. So there is also a critical gender role. I would say the 50% of population being female, they are not part of the mainstream economic sector. So these are the things which is very important for the reform. I think it brings a lot of economic imperative if we want to have sustainable growth in Pakistan.
That was very detailed description, I guess, for the policymakers to make clear policies, and in long term, think about which aspects that you should focus more on if you think more about the long-term economic growth of the country. Since you discussed about the younger generation, younger population of the country, I have a question about that, but let's move it into the last part. And before that, moving into the broader context, Dr. Fatima, I do like to ask you about Pakistan's international relations. So we do know Pakistan maintains strong relationship with countries like United States, China, and also Saudi Arabia, as well as with the international organizations such as International Monetary Fund, IMF. So in your opinion, how does the impact of these relations with the Pakistani government and these institutions for the other countries translate into the betterment of the day-to-day lives of the citizens? Like, the relationships are really benefiting to the country, the people of the country? Or what is your opinion about that?
Yeah, I have a mixed opinion about that, and thank you so much that you have taken back from Pakistan to international arena this discussion. So actually, if you look at the Pakistan's global relationship, actually, it is often discussed at a diplomatic level, but in reality, they are not abstract. They are directly shape everyday life for ordinary citizen in Pakistan, and you have said rightly. Pakistan economy is deeply globally, I would say it is globally embedded. It is not isolated. It is interdependent. So global partnership bring opportunities. And of course, I would say it brings the constraints for Pakistan's and Pakistan's economy as well. And it has, of course, the ultimate, it translated to the people of Pakistan. So first, if we take United States, for example, of course, its influence is not just about foreign policy in Pakistan. It often shapes economic reforms and not directly, of course, not directly, but through institutions, as you mentioned, like IMF. And if you know that Pakistan, we have gone to IMF 25th time now. So whenever the government of Pakistan knock the door of IMF, people in Pakistan see changes in fuel prices, in electricity tariff, or taxation policies, and of course, the welfare programs are halted. So these are often linked indirectly to the global financial arrangements, but it indicates the relation with the United States also. Then there is China, particularly through this CPEC, as I've mentioned. Now there are more, it has been always close relationship, but it is now more strengthened through the economic agreement of CPEC. For many Pakistani, this hasn't meant better infrastructure. They say that it is all loan and Pakistan will be indebted more. Roads or energy projects and connectivity, for many, they say that it hasn't achieved its 100%. So something as simple as reduced, of course, the power outages or improved our highways has a global partnership behind it. Uh, but it is still working. It has an impact. We have a Gawad report. It doesn't actually prove to be that much effective that we were having a game changer. We were thinking, but still it is working. And it has an effect on our everyday economic activity in Pakistan. Another very direct example I would give of the Gulf region. Jayashri, for instance, especially the countries like Saudi Arabia, another Gulf region, millions of Pakistani are working there, and their remittances they send back home and to sustain their household, covering their education, healthcare, and daily expenses. And at the same time, it is helping the Pakistan foreign exchange and the Pakistan's, of course, purse. So at the same time, I would say that since I'm speaking to the Australian audience, so I will talk about it also. It is if I try to highlight the Australian role, they play also a very growing role in Pakistan's economic development and development cooperation, particularly through education and skill migration. And you know that thousands of Pakistani students study in Australia, and many skilled professionals contribute to both economies. This creates not just economic links between the two countries, but of course, knowledge transfer, remittances also coming from Australia, and long-term people-to-people connections also impacting the Pakistani people. So the real challenge, actually, if I mention here, is for policymakers is to manage these relationships in a way that benefit the citizen of Pakistan while maintaining economic stability, because there is always a interdependence, vulnerability between the different countries when we have this kind of relationship, and sovereignty. At the same time, you need to integrate, you need to interdependent on other country, and at the same time, you need to actually practice your independence as a sovereign state, and you need to protect your own value system. And of course, that is a very much discussed issue of the political economy in the world. So this, I would say that it is a challenge to maintain relationship and to actually bring a kind of fruit of those relationship to the people. And that striking a balance is a challenge for the governments also.
Interesting. Moving into our final question, Dr. Fatima, since you mentioned before about Pakistan that having the highest younger youth population among the other countries in comparison to other countries in the world, this question is related to that. So since we are focusing on the youth in our discussion as well, and given that around 64% of country's population consists of youth, younger generation, in your opinion, what are the key political and/or economic changes would make the biggest difference for younger generation in Pakistan in the coming years ahead?
Okay, thank you so much for asking this question. If you remember, we talked about that Pakistan has a youth bulge. We say it's the youth bulge because 60% of the population actually is very young population of 20s and early 30s. So I have mentioned in my earlier response also that we need capability and skill development, investment in youth actually. So let me take lead from that. That for young people in Pakistan, the issue is not just I would say the lack of opportunity. It's lack of, for me, I think it's a lack of predictable and fair opportunity for the youth. So I think many young graduates to whom sometime I talk to also, they don't just worry about getting a job. They are worried whether the system will work fairly for them or not. Because a job creation in Pakistan needs to be shift from only survival to the meaningful work or the decent work in Pakistan. So the first major challenge, change in job creation should be actually that it should move from the low productivity to from informal work to the stable environment, stable employment in manufacturing, services, and especially the digital economy. As you know, that right now, many young people are either unemployed or working in jobs that do not match their education at all. Expanding industries and supporting startups can and with the entrepreneurship that can shift this survival-based work mode to, I think, career-based opportunities for them, for youth in Pakistan. The second issue I see is a merit-based governance. When they get access to the job or even the basic services, that depends, and it is very commonly known in Pakistan, that depends on the connections, then the capability. So this creates a deep frustration for me in the young people I can see. So a transparent and I would say the merit-based system, not just governance reform, but merit-based system is essential for restoring trust because there is a trust gap between the policymakers, their implementation, and the youth. Because youth people need to feel that efforts and talent will actually be rewarded. So that is actually the point, the second point. And third, I think I was thinking over it that being a university professor, we come across such issues mostly that we have an education to employment gap. There is a disconnect. There is a disconnect between education and employment in our society. Universities, they are producing graduates, they are producing degrees, but not necessarily skills that can be marketed or that can be in a demand in a market, whether in a digital technology, climate related issues, sectors, or entrepreneurship. They have to actually learn it outside the university. So the focus has to be shifted from just education to employability, to skills, to adaptability, and to innovation. So we have a growing number of freelancers, for instance, in Pakistan, and IT professionals who are earning globally. But many of them had to learn, as I said, skills outside the formal education system. So why can't this all can be embedded in a formal economic system? So if these reforms are actually pursued, Pakistani youth bulge can become a demographic dividend, not only burden. So it can help in innovation and global competitiveness, actually. So the real question is whether Pakistan has talent. It clearly does, Jayashri. It is there. Talent is there. I can just speak out from my own experience around the world during studies and also during our professional engagement. But Pakistan clearly has the talent. The question is whether the system can create a fair and consistent pathway for that talent to succeed. That is, in my view, is the fundamental question.
That's really interesting point. That's a very interesting discussion we had today with you, Dr. Fatima. Thank you very much for joining with us and giving us all the insights.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed
Yes,
discussion with you.
that was really interesting, and I learned a lot. So that's the end of our discussion today. Thank you so much for
Thank you so
sharing your
much.
insights with
You're
us, Dr.
welcome.
Fatima.
You're welcome. Thank you so
And
much.
thank you. And thank you, HYIERI audience, watching us today, the HYIERI Global Affairs Talk Show. Please subscribe to stay connected, and you all have a good night. Thank you.